When deep love is mentioned, immediately the variety of people that are volunteer, or even myself, I just fall into this trap, which is that deep love is an organization, deep love is a ministry. Terms that we've really invented in the last few hundred years within especially the western side of the world, where all of a sudden we hear a church and then we associate it with a place. We realize that others, the body of Christ, those that are listening right now, would hopefully learn what deep love is, which is an ask, it's a call, it's a reminder that they are surrounded by opportunities to love deeply, love well, and love authentically.
What's up, y'all? This is Chase.
This is Raul.
And we're very excited to spend some time today with our friend, a mentor, Steve Rioch. He is a husband. He is a father. He's been involved in the film industry for years. He's been involved in professional sports. And as I said, he's been a mentor of our community for years now. Closer to you, but I've been able to have the joy of interacting with Steve for a number of times over the past couple of years. And so grateful for the time. Thank you for being with us. How's the last couple of months been? How was the end of last year, beginning of 2026 so far?
Man, great to be with you guys. It was a blur, actually. Yeah, a lot happening in every aspect of life. We had a granddaughter born in November.
Congrats.
So
First one?
No, third.
Okay.
Yeah.
3-time granddad.
Oh, yeah, right. He's got a whole bunch.
Life is full. It's really good. And there's challenges all the time, but I'm grateful. Life is good and life is full. And we had a lot of opportunity to spend time with our kids and our grandkids. And so, yeah.
So then are you the grandpa that spoils the grandkids, or is it a little tempered, or how is it here from your perspective? I'm sure your kids would say something different, but.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if we intentionally spoil, but I think what we want to do is just let our grandchildren know that they're deeply loved by their grandparents, that we're going to be involved in their life. We're going to invest ourselves in them. So I think if we spoil them, it's probably more with trying to spoil them with time and love and just them knowing that we're present, with them. And it's really fun to watch our children be parents. It's so much fun to watch our kids be parents, and they're such amazing parents. They're so great. But you think about the way things used to be, and families weren't separated by geography, hundreds, thousands of 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, even 100 years ago. Travel and transportation has changed the world, obviously, but it's also changed families. And so it used to be that grandparents or parents and their children and their grandchildren all lived close together. And they were all doing life together on a consistent basis. It's not like that so much anymore for most families. And we're just really fortunate and blessed that we get to do that. Our kids live pretty close to us. They're all, they're within very short drive. And so we're thankful that we get a chance to invest in our kids and our grandchildren and just spend time with them.
Yeah. And I was going to encourage you. I'm glad to hear that you're excited to be around the grandkids and your kids as parents now. I was really fortunate to grow up with pretty much all of my extended family within like 30 minutes of my parents' house. Like both sets of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, like all of that. And as a kid, you grow up and you somewhat take it for granted, where it's like, oh, I see this cousin like every 2 weeks. Like, sure, they kind of feel like a brother or sister, but as we grow, the level of gratitude, the level of awareness is just different. But my grandparents on both my mother's side and my father's side have been super, super present and impactful and pivotal over the years. And I lost my grandma on my dad's side. Actually, her anniversary of passing is coming up in 3 days. It was 2 years ago. Still something that impacts me a lot, which I'm grateful that can be the case. Because some people, if they lose a grandma, it's like, oh, I didn't really know her. She was some lady that lived up in Chicago, like a 16-hour drive.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really good to hear from someone who has been impacted by a grandfather so much that you're really present in their lives?
We love it. My wife and I love it. And like just today, a couple times a week, she's watching one of our grandkids. And then today, my son brought both of their children over, both grandchildren. So he's got a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. And she, for some reason, really likes me. And so as soon as she hears my voice when she comes in the house, she runs toward me with her arms up. And, you just like, what an opportunity we have to just love on them and, again, invest in their lives. And so, and the reality is, no matter how amazing our kids and their spouses are, they need help too at times. It's tiring being a parent. It can be exhausting and you need help, So we're so excited we get the chance to do that. Yeah.
It's just to break the ice, it's Steve Rich. Before we have people tuning in, they're like searching Steve Riak, and they're like, I can't find this guy anywhere.
Really not Riak?
It's Rich. I learned the hard way too, don't worry. I started telling people I knew Steve Riak, and people were like, who are you talking about?
Okay, so I got it from somewhere. That was him.
Blame me, why don't
I had
you?
it spelled wrong on my phone this whole time.
You don't?
No, it's probably spelled right.
Correctly.
It's just pronounced Rich.
You can smack me upside the head later.
Yeah, well, don't worry.
matter to
I
me.
kind of verbally just
I've
did
heard everything you can imagine in my lifetime, really.
that. I'm not going to ask what you heard because that's probably...
Plus, you can re-record that open at some point anyways.
Yeah. We talked with our producer extraordinary about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you say that because one of the things that, people have given me these like quote unquote surnames of like man of many mentors and all sorts of things, not to like prop myself up. It's really the hand
Lord of the Rings name or something.
Yeah.
The hand of God has just been such a sweet thing for me to take inventory through the years of being somebody that just really didn't have a prevalent father figure. My dad wasn't gone. He wasn't an addict. He wasn't an alcoholic. He was a sweet man who did his best. Unfortunately for him, he also didn't have a father figure. And so when obviously I'm being, I always say like I wasn't looking for Jesus. Jesus was profusely looking for me. And I eventually realized, oh my gosh, he's making himself known to me. But then it was this endless just battle of understanding what in the world does this look like? Because for somebody, a young man, right around 19 years old, like the idea of what does life look like is really not the real question. It's like, what is life for a man supposed to look like? Because you have all these definitions being thrown at you in light of what a man is, right? You got the Steve Tate, the Tates of the world telling you what a man is, and you got the business side that's telling you what, the rise and grind hustle mind is telling you what men are supposed to be doing. And yet, to what you and me often talk about, this idea of what faithfulness looks like. And faithful in what is completely sideswiped to the left. It's kind of like a retirement term. Like now you get to be faithful in the things that actually have substance. And so long thought to say, we always say this about women, right? We either we say it in marriage or we say it in dating, that we're looking for that Proverbs 31 woman. But there's these Ephesians 5, 2 Timothy, Titus men, right? That are indicatively talked about, probably even more so, because for where the man is at, and I'm going to probably stir the pot for a lot of people watching, but for the state of a country, state of a town, state of a city, state of a home, it's really going to find out where the state of the heart of the man that's leading that home, the state of that city, etc. And it's kind of a downflow, upflow. And I really had no one to turn to. And so in that, Steve was one of these men that the Lord put in my heart. And so just to honor you, it was this idea that I didn't really know his wide span array of, I won't say business or anything like that, but to service, which is much of what we're going to talk about here today. But to serve the assignments outside the home while being just present and intentional in the home, which you don't really know, right? You show up at church, you meet someone in church, which is literally where you and me met, introduced by somebody that kind of, one side is to like look at the outside the house resume, and one thing is to look at the inside the house resume and see a man that is faithful and present in that capacity. And so watching Steve, because he allowed me to, he invited me in, he allowed me to introduce me to his wife and so on and so forth, introduced me to his kids. It was just consistency. And it was the prioritization, right? Priority of not just saying my family comes first, the Lord comes first, but watching it, real life, and making it real. So
Yeah.
long thought, maybe long tangent, but just to acknowledge that, considering that's where I think it stems of a heart of service, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, which is super honoring. Who would you say are some of the people who've inspired your masculinity or walk with the Lord or just anything within that? How has that developed like over the years? You and I haven't really talked about that so far.
I was really fortunate that, when I became a Christ follower in college, I had a professor at the university I was at, and a young man that was leading a campus faith group as well. And these two men kind of picked me out and took me under their wing, and they did something with me that is not common in the current culture in the American church, really, which is they discipled me. Not by giving me a workbook to work through, but they let me do life with them. They invited me into their home. They spent time with me on a consistent basis. I asked a lot of questions. I observed them, just the same kind of thing Raul was talking about. And they deliberately invested and poured their lives into me. And so there's no question that my life would be dramatically different had those two men not invested their lives in me. I'm forever grateful for them. And so it was, I think it's kind of like, the household you grow up in, or if you're participating in a sports team or you're playing an instrument or whatever, you kind of learn how to do that. For me, that learning was just with those two men was normal. And I thought to me that, well, that's the way you do it. And so when I'm grown up and adult, I'm going to do the same thing, and so it became very natural to just kind of follow the lead of what they did in my life, which, as I read the scripture, that's the way Jesus was with the people he was around. And if we're really going to model ourselves after Jesus and follow his example, that should be so natural to us, in my opinion, that we determine that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pour back into the lives of others. And I think I'm really encouraged because I think there's something stirring in people today where they want to be more devoted to that. How can I, again, it's not programmatic, but how can I be a mentor or an influence on somebody else? How can I pass down the things I've learned? I mean, I think as mature individuals, that's a nice way of saying old.
Experienced, seasoned
individuals, and that we've had all these experiences that we've had in our life, and we've had these encounters where God's done some amazing things and revealed himself, and we've seen it's malpractice as a Christ follower, as a human being, frankly, if we're not passing that on to the next generation. It's malpractice. So, I've been inspired to do that for many, many years, and that influence, certainly early on, that you asked about is what I'm sure planted that in me.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, but I want you to share. Over the last year and a half or so, you've walked with someone who's become a close friend of ours, Chris. Shout out, Chris. And he was baptized within the last 6-ish months.
Yeah.
Pretty sure at your house?
Yeah.
That's insane. I did not.
In our pool.
I did not. That did not click with me until
now.
I've heard you use the phrase that you've been like discipling him, older brothering him, whatever words you want to use. What isn't inspired and an influence like your decision to either like take up that responsibility, because discipleship is a responsibility, but also what's been some of the things that you've been encouraged by like through that relationship over the last couple of years?
Well, I think it's a group effort, right? Because I think you're right. I definitely use those terms, but it's kind of a beautiful thing when you see the body of Christ do what the body of Christ is set to be doing. That then indicatively then makes a case that we are the body of Christ. And there's just a few. It's not really super complex. One of those things is to go and make disciples, which in simple terms is to go make students, right? Of not us, even though Paul says to imitate me, but it's really to say, like, watch who I'm watching, right? Follow who I'm following, and let me show you how I've learned to do so as I obviously lock in arms with you and do that. And yeah, I mean, just to put myself out there, I go out. I don't go out to drink or anything, but I go dancing every week. And it's funny, I say young guy. He's not that much younger than me. He's, I think, 23. My age is irrelevant right now. And what you can imagine in the top of mind is like a college environment. Kid, I guess, has been watching me, which is much of what we were just talking about in line of the conversation. Like, the world is watching the body, the church, yet we don't really take much account of that. And so when we fall hard because we don't know that they're watching. And when we do well, unfortunately, the human nature is we don't really get much praise because we're not supposed to get that praise. But in this instance, this kid, I guess, had been watching me while I would go out there. And I was very, I guess, selective with who I would choose to dance with or what songs I would dance to or so on and so forth. And so one night he just asked me, walked up to me mid some dance happening. And I don't know this kid very well. He's just kind of in circle of environment. And he said, hey, question for you. If I were to ask a girl out that's kind of like you, how would you do that? And obviously I'm like, maybe a bit sarcastic, but I'm like, if she's like me, you probably should run. Or she's confused, one or the other. But of course, what he was talking about was her faith, her worldview. And eventually I push back on him and he says, like, I believe, but not like you believe. So I'm trying to get a gauge for how would you ask a girl like that out? And I said, well, to be honest with you, who's asking? And he said, well, me. And I said, well, in all candor and, not to be rude, you don't, because a girl like that is accounting that you probably counted the cost, right? That you're going to lead, you're going to serve, you're going to lay down your life as Christ has done for us. And she hopes that the man who chooses to pursue her will do so. Where are you going? And of course, that turned into an enigma. But he was relentless. And that led to various conversations over weeks to a point where at one point I called Steve and I said, look, there's this guy. He's relentlessly asking questions. I don't know if the intentions are right. I think it's only for this one girl. And eventually the intensity of his questions led me to say, but at least he's asking, what do you think? And I think the first time you said, I don't think this is the right moment. And then eventually you said, you know what, bring him. And we'll see if he even shows up. And he did. And I think it was that literal moment. He asked one question that sideswiped the whole group for the rest of the morning. And no one knew he wasn't a Christian because it's easy to just masquerade yourself in a room by just asking a question. No one assumes you're not walking with Christ. And I'll let you go from there in light of, because it became everyone kind of put their arms around him from the decision. I won't break the ice. I'll let you.
Yeah, it was really sweet because there were a group of young men who kind of all came around him and try to help answer questions. And then the group ended and there were probably half a dozen young men that stayed to chat with him and visit with him. And he was still asking more questions. And then he was presented with the opportunity, the question about, would you like to become a Christ follower? And he said, yes, just right there. So, and to what's really wonderful is to see the growth and maturity in his life since that time.
Yeah.
There's nobody that would know him, whether it's a family member or a friend, and would look at who he is right now in his life versus who he was a year ago.
Yeah.
And say, God's not real. It's the joy that's in him, the peace that's in him, the maturity that he's gained. It's just not happenstance. So it's been really fun to see, what's happened. And I was going to say, I think, there's been a misunderstanding. And look, there are a lot of amazing churches. So this is not a blanket criticism of church, but it's a kind of an awakening for followers. I think there's been a misunderstanding when we read in the Gospels where Jesus calls the disciples, come and follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men, is the one that we remember most, right? And I think there's just kind of this, we kind of tuck it away into our understanding of what that means. And they kind of lived with him for a few years, and then I'm not sure what they all did, but I think some of them died. It's kind of like we have this kind of vague understanding of what their lives were like. Or if we watch The Chosen or something, right?
How many people have replaced the Bible with?
But having an understanding of what Jesus said to them in the context of that day when he said, "Follow me," and what it meant, and the weight of those words, is something that I wish every person who identifies themselves as being a Christian would understand. Because those men knew full well what it meant in that day. When a rabbi would ask somebody like yourself, "Hey, Chase, come follow me." First of all, they knew that they were amongst the elite if that happened, because only the elite were called to follow the rabbi. The well-educated, the wealthy, the elite. These are like people that had gone to Harvard in our culture, or Yale. And they were the only ones that were privileged enough to follow the rabbi. But what it meant was, you're going to spend 24/7 around me. You're going to sleep, eat. I'm not just teaching you. You're going to observe me all the time. And there was this phrase that the rabbis and the Jewish culture used at the time, which was, "May the dust of the rabbi get on you," which could only do if you were close enough proximity to him that the dust from his feet when he walked would kick up on you, right?
That's right.
And so the understanding of what Jesus was really asking when he went to these men and said, "Follow me," and the fact that they weren't close to being the elite, what he was telling them was so revolutionary at the time that following the rabbi and living with the rabbi is not just for the elite, it's for anybody. It's for anybody who's willing to follow. But if you follow, understand what that means is you're going to be close to me all the time. And it's this idea we get that you guys have both been talking about observing, watching that faithfulness, how they interact with people, how they break the bread. It's all of that. And getting the full understanding and the full dynamic of that is what Jesus asked them to do. And that's what they literally had while they were with him for that time. And I think we lose some of that. And what he's calling us to do as Christians is to do the same thing. It's not to sign up for something. It's not to raise my hand in a service and say, "Oh, that takes care of it." He's calling every one of us to follow him and get close enough to him and intimately associated with him that we see how he lives on it, what his desires are, what's in his heart. That's what he's asking us to do, and it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and there's a lot of branches on this that we could go off. One that I want to briefly talk about because it stirs a lot of passion and interest and like testimony in myself. But I've come across a fair amount of believers today that are almost afraid to spend time with non-believers. And that, especially in Dallas and in a number of other cities, you could live a relatively comfortable life and only be friends with other Christians. I understand where that desire or idealism comes from, because it's, all of the early church was just doing community together, like bad company corrupts good morals, we need to be around solid people, like all of that. Yet at the same time, whenever we look at Jesus' life and the early apostles' life, like we see them interacting with so many people from different walks of life, different value systems, all of that.
Yeah.
And for me, particularly in college, but a lot of other times in life, there's been a huge maturing process that's come whenever I've been around non-believers on a consistent basis. One of our friends, Jair, who was on our last episode, I give him him and his girlfriend, Anna Joy, a huge credit for this. But I have seen how these non-believers observe a lot more than what we think that they do. And we think that they don't give us the benefit of the doubt or whatever else, but a lot of times they've just seen so many believers not live up to their words. A variety of other things too. But in college, while being an athlete, I had a really valuable opportunity to be around these teammates on a daily basis where, out of the 30 of them, like 3.5 of them were believers. I would say something like that.
I don't know what that happened.
Yeah, we talk about it.
We're all going to ask that at some point, or a comment.
But
he was the half.
I'm grateful to say the Lord kept me from falling into things that people tend to fall into in college. Super grateful. But it was really special to be able to not be out there like directly evangelizing to them every day, because at some point you'd run up against a wall, you'd be pushy.
Sure.
It wouldn't be considerate. It wouldn't be loving. And I was able to the best of my ability, walk in righteousness and show them the character of Jesus daily, which in a way was like discipleship, but also in a way it was like serving them, because they're showing them the heart of Jesus and all of this. And so there's a lot of this theme of doing the simple things daily with either believers or non-believers that I think is really powerful, that a lot of people overlook. A lot of the times we think that we need to do these massive crusades. We think we need to do all this revival, like all this large weekly church events, different things like that. Again, not to denigrate those necessarily, but it is of the experience of my life that doing the simple things in love day to day is often the most powerful form of discipleship and form of service that we can give anyone.
Well, you mentioned the early church, and what the early church was marked by was not only coming together on a consistent basis and having fellowship and breaking bread and meeting at each other's homes, but they were also marked according to the extra biblical writings that exist from that time. That they were the ones that went out when the pagans around them had a family member die, and it was the Christ followers in the early church that would go out and take care of that body, pay for the burial, and it was so astounding. It was so astounding to the people that they were around, who would watch them handle it while they were in grief, and they didn't have the resources to be able to take care of it. And they're actually dealing with everything that went along with taking care of that dead body and the burial and all that. And according to the early writings, it's one thing that differentiated them from everyone else in the culture around the pagans that lived in that culture, and drew them to what was happening with the early church, because their attitude was, who does that? Who does what you're doing for no gain? You're not getting any gain for helping us. And I think, understanding that my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, my wife's sister and her husband, we do a trip every year to Mexico with a couple of teams of people from Texas, some from California, and we'll build a home for a family that doesn't have a home, and or maybe 2 or 3 homes. It depends on how many people we have with us each summer. It's an unbelievable trip.
That was what the pickleball tournament was raising funds for, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
So my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, they bring all of their friends, or invite all of their friends, whether they're Christian or not. And it's to have an experience, to do something to give back to somebody else, right? For anybody that goes. But what's happened to them oftentimes is people that might not consider themselves Christians will say to them, Christians really do this kind of thing? This is amazing.
It's scary or thought-provoking.
It is thought-provoking, right? But it's like what the early church did. We're serving, this goes back to your comment at the beginning. We're serving somebody. And the people that are with us, around us, serving with us, are watching what we do and how we do it, and wanting to see if what we believe in is real, and how we're different or not different. But I think those things are so powerful, and I can tell you, like I can recall multiple incidents like this, but one I'm thinking about is on a movie set for a film I was producing. There can be a lot of chaos at time on a movie set. You have to move fast because you're burning dollars if you don't move, and so you're trying to get everything done as fast as you can. And so we're moving from one location to another, and there's a lot of equipment being moved and set pieces and props and all this kind of stuff. And one of the crew members, I'm running down the hallway of this prison facility that we were shooting in, and one of the crew members stopped me while I'm running. And she said, "I'm so sorry, I got to stop you, but can I stop you for just a minute?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "I just have a question for you." And I'm thinking she's going to ask me, where do I find the sound guy, or where do I find the makeup trailer, or, whatever. And she said, "I've been watching you for the whole week, and I've noticed that you have such a peace about you. You never get rustled. You never get ruffled. You never get upset. Why is that?" Well, so she'd been observing. I had no idea she was observing, but it gave me a chance very quickly. Like I had to be somewhere in like 60 seconds. I couldn't give her the whole message, but I said, I'm a follower of Christ, and he gives me peace in every circumstance. And, or something like that. We had this kind of drive-by, but she noticed, right? And that's not a pat on the back, because listen, there are plenty of people that haven't noticed that in me as well, right? They have seen me get frustrated or whatever because I'm imperfect. But I think when we have the opportunity with people that we're working around to just see that there's something that maybe they see that they don't have, that I think that's part of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Is just living that way, not trying to coax somebody or fake it or whatever.
Check off a box.
But if it can really live out of us, I think it makes a difference. It makes it makes something that we have that they don't know what it is appealing and attractive to them, and then we have the opportunity maybe to tell them what that is, and then they've got an opportunity to either say I'm interested in that or I'm not. But I don't know how I got off on that tangent.
No, I got it.
But I think that's like the early church. I think that's like the early church. Is they saw people not just staying kind of only within themselves, but they saw them doing things that were unusual, that were sacrificial, and that truly helped them. And it made a difference in the way that they viewed those people, and they wanted to know more information. Undoubtedly, that's why the church grew on a daily basis, is not just because God was moving supernaturally, but because these pagans saw something that was so different and they couldn't explain it otherwise.
Which I don't want to shell shock to show in light of like hard pivot, but I will say in light of just the listener, not to even stir the pot too much, but to make it real, because most people will hear pagan and they'll either have their own definition of it, but it's not to go political here, but it is like you having that, regardless of how people vote or how people voted most recently, like it is like, considering how politically charged we are, it is like knowingly seeing across the street how your neighbor is going to vote, how their behavior conducts, and even maybe antagonistic toward you, their rituals, their culturalisms, their beliefs, the things that they're advocating for, and they are across the street, and then they lose a loved one, and you go and pay for that burial site. And considering to make it just as relatable as possible, considering the way that we watch the church conduct themselves, when we find out who and what political affiliation most people vote for, Christian or not, our Christianity gets punted to Timbuktu, and all of a sudden they're lost or deceived. Cut your losses. I mean, we do that with family, even just in light of what we believe. So I don't know. I felt like that was a good example just to bring up, because a lot of people will hear that and they don't really connect the severity of what it meant for a Jew that's still a Jew, because that's a culture, it's not just a religion, to know that somebody is unclean, meaning just completely antagonistic to their own way of living, and they're going to go into the most unclean place, which is a tomb, and pay rap. I mean, they went through the whole extent of that because they couldn't afford it, they would not only front the cost, but also lay down their own Judaism, lay down their own customs for the sake of Christ being presented in the most intimate time for most people, outside of course, just, family and marriage and such. It's one of the most intimate and most personal, most saddening. But what an opportunity for us to do that. I mean, maybe even a teaching moment for people to think about, how can I serve and penetrate the walls of somebody that's so headstrong? Well, maybe it's at the forefront of death that life is found, and even what you're sharing. But not to completely, go off on a tangent, I wanted to rewind a little bit and touch on, Steve, deep love mostly as a whole has been seen as this like outreach to go and serve people on the street, gathering of what was 9 and turned into 60 plus volunteers out of the heart posture of so many people seeing a need, and without even diagnosing their heart too deeply, they were like, I want to serve, and I can't believe that serving is only being a greeter, parking lot duty, or children's ministry, not to degrade those ways of service in the body that you gather in. But I can't believe that is what serving is, because when I get into this thing I called my manual to instruct me on how to live my life and live it for Him, those are there, but is most indicatively and most vitally not only through Christ's life, but literally just written down, visiting the widow, helping the poor, and it goes down the line. And not to go into the weeds of how you've done that on a literal Isaiah 61 sense, but just to go into like your walk with Christ, which you shared on how you were discipled and how the Lord has given you so many assignments. I know you've been in film. Maybe just to give the audience a little bit about how your wide span of just assignments, some of them are professional, some of them are purely ministerial. And I mean, I know you and me work hand in hand with one of those, and just share those to attach the practicalism of what service really looks like. Because we were just having a conversation with our producer of like, we think that a lot of people, when they hear serve, it's what I was just sharing, versus wait, you showing up here and helping us produce this show with excellence, right? We had a bulky mic and he's like, no, I'm going to do it with this mic. Why? Because we're serving the body. If this message goes out, I'm serving the Lord with an audience of one. So I wanted to kind of share that and see if you could speak from there.
Yeah, and also along with that, how have you developed and grown a heart to serve? Because it takes a particular heart to do this type of sacrifice.
A lot there, but what the Lord puts on your heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know where to start, but I would say this, that, there are things I fully believe that each of us is created to do that exactly specifically no one else will do. Maybe generally they will, but exactly specifically. I mean, the impact that I'll have on specific people is going to be different than you have or you have. It's the use of the gifts maybe that God's given us will be used a little differently. We may have similar gifts or same gifts, but they'll just be used differently. We're all unique, special, one of a kind. And I think if most people could understand that they were created as unique and special and one of a kind, and there will never be anybody else just like them on the face of the planet. Never has been, never will be. And get a sense of our identity, that there's something special that each of us was created to do. And if we can find that, and maybe more than one thing, right? But if we can find that special thing that we were created to do, it would, what I think most people don't realize, it would give them the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate sense of joy, So it's been like, how can I find the ways that I was created, the things that I was created to do, and the ways to express that, right? So I believe, and I know this sounds like self-serving, and so it's hard to like discuss it this way, but I believe that one of the gifts I've been given is to tell story. And I believe story is impactful. I mean, culture after culture after culture, generation after generation after generation, story has been what is maybe the most impactful thing in culture. Jesus told story all the time, all the time, to engage the listener. And truth was throughout his story all the time. So I gravitated towards that. Obviously, it meant, because I was gravitating towards that and was an attraction to it, that something was in me. And so I just, felt like that was something that I was to express, and hopefully you do it well. And, whether it's in book form or speaking or film or whatever it is, there's an opportunity to tell story. And I believe that, where we are from a kind of an industry standpoint now is there is a significant opportunity for really good storytellers to be out there, whether it's in television or film or documentary or whatever, or podcasting. There's a glut of content, but there's a vacuum of content that is made for people who are firm in their values, who may or may not be Christians, but they just want something good that they can feel good about watching. They can feel good about their children watching. They don't feel like they have to go take a shower after they've watched it, And I think there's a vacuum there. And so I believe what the world needs right now is more people in any of those areas of the culture that will tell great stories and tell them well, And I think we have to be very respectful of the fact that just because I want to be a storyteller or I feel like I have a story to tell, that doesn't mean that I have the right to tell that story. We have to study, work, get better. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, hey, because God's called me to be a storyteller, He's going to open the doors, and it's just kind of boom, I'm going to have the opportunity. And I think it's a mistake if we think that way. We better know our craft. We better study hard. We better learn. We better be great to work with. We better show up early and stay late and really work at it to be really good. But if we do that and we get really good at it, then we have the opportunity and the right to be storytellers, and we can impact a whole generation and generations to come. And I think we're seeing it at the box office. We're seeing it with what's happening even with the streaming content. People are desperate, hungry for good, wholesome content that they can walk out of the theater or, when they finish watching it on the streaming service, they really feel good about what they just saw. It inspires them, makes them feel better. It makes them feel like there's hope for humanity. There's so much negativity around us. Every day. I mean, you pick up anything on social media and you're going to see somebody criticizing somebody or calling them out or disrespecting them or whatever it is. It's everywhere. And I think the audience is tired of having that all the time. So that's my soapbox. But I think we have an opportunity. And for people who want to step into that, study, get great at what you do, and then you're going to get an opportunity, right? And story can influence, and we don't have to make it just Christian films or Christian television. We can just make great, morally virtuous content that people will be a step of their process to understand that there is a greater truth out there that is valuable and, wonderful. So I felt that was part of what I was supposed to do. I was drawn toward that. And so I've had the opportunity to do some things in film and documentary and TV space and produce some live events and, that kind of thing. And I'm really very, very grateful for those opportunities. We're trying to do more of that now, and all the time, every day we're working on stuff and very different projects. Some are sports related, some are people related documentaries, some are narrative feature films, some are scripted television series, some are unscripted television series. It's just like, where can we tell great story? Find great story, tell it really well, and hopefully make a difference in the audiences that come and see it. Get them to think at least differently. Get them to open their mind to something, inspire them, give them hope. So that's what I've attempted to do on that side, and try to be faithful with that, and steward that well, and also recognize that in most of those instances, somebody is paying for that, whether it's a network or an investor or a streaming service or a sponsor or whatever. And so you have this whole other side where you not only better be good at your craft and study and learn and grow and do all that, but you better be a good steward of the resources you've been trusted with. And if we treat them like, well, this is my playground, somebody's giving me this money and I can go just do what I want to do with it. I mean legally, it's all legal and ethical, but I can do whatever I want with it. Now I get a chance to paint and shape and mold and create what I want to create. but we're not thinking every day about that person who we've taken their money from, or that company we've taken their money from, and how am I going to steward as best as I can? Then we're off base. We're off base. So we have to be thinking about that as well. Somebody's entrusted me with a lot of money, whether it's $20 million or whether it's $10,000. It's a lot of money to somebody. And I better steward it well. And I'm responsible, if I'm the filmmaker or the producer, for what happens with that money. I'm responsible for going back to them and saying, guess what, we lost your money or we made you money. So I have to think about that in advance as well. Anybody that's trying to enter into the business has to be thinking about that.
Sounds like what you said earlier when you were running on film set, because I know we're cutting short on time here. You were running in the heat of the moment. Time is dollars, as you were just talking about. But because of the way that you were posturing is what I've even shared. It's not my original thought, but that there's 4 Gospels. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? The biography accounts of Jesus, but the way that we get to know him really personally. But there's the one that people will read and watch and acknowledge and experience long before they ever get to John, which is the one we usually tell people to go read, which is the Christian, right? And it's how you do what you've said you've done in the film world. Obviously, you and me have worked in many other ways in regards to even the juvenile world, correctional world, where it's how you've done it that really dictates that person pausing you in the heat of doing things with a posture that's hopefully right before the Lord, that will testify. And I think if anything, that's a token for our audience to take away, which is how you will do what you're entrusted will lead people to know who you're serving in the process, or a conversation that allows you the permission to share with who you're serving, and that's what you're watching and witnessing, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think that's part of it. And I also think that you have to come with the reality as well that it's not going to happen with everybody you come in contact with. I mean, there are plenty of people I've worked with, I'm sure, that think I'm a jerk, So my point is, we can't shift our focus to pleasing people. We just can't, because it's never going to happen. Some people are going to like us, some people are not. And we have to be okay with that. There are plenty of people that did not like Jesus.
That's right.
There were people that were calling for him, his blood be on our hands. That's how far we're willing to go with you taking him to the cross.
Amen.
So we do our best to follow him faithfully. We do our best to let people see him in us, but we're not going to win everyone. And
That's right.
He didn't win everyone, So we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with the fact that there are going to be people that I'm going to work with that aren't going to like me. I'm not attempting for that. I'm not wanting people to not like me, but it's going to happen. And, we can't shift that into how can I cultivate everything to please everybody I'm around? That's an endless cycle.
Yes.
Yeah. To start to land the plane, last thing that
Clearly going to have you back.
I wanted, yeah, last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on. It's come to my mind a couple times as I've been around you and as I was thinking about just our time together today. But in 2 Peter 1, it has this little excerpt. Make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, virtue with knowledge, knowledge with self-control, self-control with steadfastness, steadfastness with godliness, godliness with brotherly affection with love. For if these character qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. I think with this heart of service that you've developed over the years and that we've seen you demonstrate, character and integrity and sit at the foundation of that, I just want to hear whatever comes to your mind. Like, how is your character and how is your integrity developed over the years? And what does that journey look like on kind of a concluding?
That closing nut that you have, Steve, before our producer kicks us out here.
So part of it was the formation that was helped by those 2 men, for sure. Part of it was getting into the scripture and learning, what the character of Jesus was, and how could I, by getting close to him, have my mind renewed and have that character built into me. But aside from that, I really don't think that character and integrity are built in us without going through very difficult circumstances. And some of that incorporates suffering and heartache.
That's right.
And pain, sometimes insufferable, seemingly, circumstances in our life. And I also think not getting what we ask for right away all the time. I mean, there's times of waiting and enduring, and the Scripture's full of exhortations to endure.
That's right.
So if it's there, it's there for a reason, right? And I think that it's not going to make people happy who are watching this podcast or listening, because none of us wants to suffer. None of us wants to wait or have to patiently endure hardship, but it's what builds character. And Paul said something in the Scriptures that is just, it should blow our minds and confuse us. I count everything loss that I'm paraphrasing, that I may know him, the power of his resurrection, and no period there, but he put and be acquainted with the fellowship of his suffering.
That's right.
Why in the world would he say that? Why in the world would he just not put a period after that I may know him and the power of his resurrection? Why did he add and be acquainted with the fellowship of his suffering? Who wants that? None of us. But what Paul knew was, without being acquainted with the fellowship of his suffering, he couldn't truly know him in every aspect, and he couldn't truly be molded into his image. And so I think character and integrity comes through all the things we talked about earlier, being around great people that can disciple you, getting to know Jesus and dig into the Word, but being willing to walk through and endure hardship, suffering, heartbreak, enduring time where we wait for whatever it is, waiting for our spouse to come, waiting for the thing that we feel called to actually take place, waiting for the job to come, waiting for an answer for some critical decision. Because at the end of the day, what God's trying to build in us, I truly believe, through every circumstance in our life, is trust in him. Period.
Amen.
Period. And the temptation always for us is to trust in ourselves or to take it into our own hands. It's not happening in the time I want, the way that I want. I'm going to take it in my own hands and help God get it done. Well, listen, he doesn't need my help.
That's right.
And what he's trying to get me to do is to be able to trust him. And every time we go through endurance and trust him, it builds us for the next one and the next one and the next one. And so, endurance is like building muscle in the gym. Character and integrity are like building muscle in the gym. And there comes a place where you continue to build that muscle, continue to trust him, and the hardships that come after that, they aren't that big of a deal anymore, because you're rooted not in I'm so strong I can handle it, but you're rooted in trust in him. He's got a purpose in this. He's doing something greater that I can't see right now. So I'm going to trust him and believe, and I'm going to endure until I see what he's doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. Yeah. There's been this line that I've been dwelling on. You're using the excuse of passion to disguise your inability to tolerate hardness. But yeah, Steve, thank you so much just for the time being here today and just consistently being in our lives as well. If people want to just find you or anything that you're doing, is there anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to oneheart.com. It's spelled out, oneheart.com, and they can find out all about the work we're doing with kids in prison, and it'll lead them to the movie and all kinds of other stuff. They can reach out to me there. I'd be happy to engage them.
Great.
Yeah,
that'll be
thank
awesome. But yeah, thank y'all so much just for tuning in. We hope y'all enjoyed the conversation today. We hope it was insightful. We hope y'all got something from it. We have the well in person that we can draw from weekly, monthly, but hopefully y'all got a little bit from this. And yeah, subscribe, like, comment, all that fun stuff. We'll be back with another episode here in the next couple weeks. So until next time, much love. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you, guys.